Hello and welcome to episode 83 of the 905 podcast. I'm Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
This week we're turning our attention to Mississauga and asking whether Canada's sixth largest city is maybe one of the most misunderstood and underestimated cities, not just in the 905, but across Canada. To discuss this with us, we invited on Jay Kana, the owner and editor-in-chief of modernmississauga.com. Modern Mississauga explores Mississauga through the lens of the 21st century, covering culture, living, technology, arts, entertainment, community, history, and much more. As is so often the case, our conversation with Jay went in a whole bunch of directions we didn't expect, and the subjects that will certainly have relevance for the 905 region wherever you live. So welcome, Jay Kana, to the 905 podcast. Really pleased to have you on today.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
That's always good to hear. So we thought to start off by just letting you kind of give your own introduction to an extent to explain what modern Mississauga is and how it came into being and kind of what your experience has been with that since it was founded.
Okay, yes, we're going on about 6 years, so I will try and be quick. Feel free to interrupt and stop me because sometimes I talk too fast and too much. That's what happens when you live by yourself with two cats. So the short version is Modern Mississauga was thought of in the fall of 2015. I had been with another Mississauga lifestyle magazine called Mississauga Life from 2010 until the Easter weekend of 2015. It just ran its course, a great experience. I took the summer off because I was 37 at the time, and I didn't just want another job. I wanted to really kind of set some time aside and figure out, okay, what do I really want to do? And I had that, what I think the kids call it FOMO, the whole fear of missing out.
Right.
So I took the summer and I traveled a bit and I just took stock of my life, where I was when I wanted. And I had the experience, I had the connections, and I had the drive. And Mississauga didn't have a lifestyle magazine, which was a little bizarre considering we're Canada's sixth biggest city.
Yeah.
So I just took a couple of weeks, put myself together, did my research and digging and due diligence. I'm like, okay, this is viable, it's sustainable, and it's expandable. So the official switch was flipped on December 1st, 2015, and the website went up, social media went up, and I started as a print magazine. First issue came out in the spring of 2016, and we'll fast forward to the end of 2019, just before the pandemic. My Canada Post prices were going up, my printing costs were going up, my ink costs were going up, so everything was going up. And I'm like, well, there's a reason there's not really a lot of print out there. Yes, there's a tiny market for it, and people that love print are very loyal to it, but I would rather go out on my terms than release a 100-page magazine, and maybe a 60-page magazine, and then by the end of it, if I'm handing out an 8.5 by 11 folded in half, right? Like, it's kind of telling. So I had a good run. I'm going to convert to digital. I called all my clients, explained to them why I was doing it, and one of the benefits were of going to digital, and specifically interactive digital. So with my digital magazine now, there's videos that are embedded in there. You can click on the links to go to websites or special offers, and it's good for me. It's good for the readers. And more importantly, it's really good for the clients because they can track. The number one goal of advertising is to find out how much you can get a return on for what you're investing. So that is this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Your story is, I find it very intriguing because if you look at kind of the global, or not the global, the national picture of media in this country, there's talk of, we need to preserve newspapers and magazines and print and whatnot. And I'd argue the content we need to preserve, but that format really is going the way of the dinosaur. I find, there's more and more versatility to get the information and the story across when you do pursue like a digital platform.
Well, absolutely. And if we didn't innovate, we'd still be under the horse and buggy concept. We can go further in the end of June in 2021 than we could go 100 years ago. So getting there is not the problem. Just the same way the information isn't the problem. It's how it's consumed. I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but every Sunday morning when my iPhone dings, it says, "Hey Jay, this is how much time you spent on me for the past week." It's 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and part of it's work, part of it's just mindless scrolling, whatever it is. But access to information is what's really crucial. And more than that, it's having the ability to double, triple, and quadruple check what you're seeing, what you're reading, what you're consuming, what you're watching. There's that old adage, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And sometimes there's clickbait and I knew I was going to screw that up. Sensationalized headlines. But, between Snopes and, reputable news organizations and experts, you should be able to verify something fairly quickly if it kind of sets off your spidey senses. Like, as an example, did Doug Ford really lose $4.4 billion? Is it 4.4 million? Was there a typo or whatever it is? But you're absolutely right. We need to preserve the information, not necessarily the medium.
It's so important that we have, correct me if I'm wrong, but like Mississauga, like you say, 6th biggest city in Canada, not well served until recently at least, and you're obviously evidence to the contrary, not well served by media. Certainly, I think it has this, the regular kind of local. I don't know what it's called. I don't even know what it's called, but we have the Burlington Post here in Burlington, and Mississauga, I'm guessing, has the Mississauga Post, owned by the same company.
The Mississauga News, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got the Mississauga News, which is run by Metroland, which has used to have a lot of small papers in communities, but now they're kind of being.
It's all owned by Torstar.
Yeah, Torstar. Yep.
Right.
And I don't want to sort of diss them too much, but it is they're not the most exciting entities, and they're getting smaller and smaller and more infrequent.
Right, and even if they were the most exciting of entities, which is good on them, what makes us a community, what helps us thrive is getting different points of view. Imagine if we were a one-party Canada, or a party in the country, like we were only Liberals or only NDP or whatever it was. Having more voices, controversial, yeah, you'll have a bit of that, but just something as a conversation point, not necessarily an argument point. To go back to what you said a few minutes ago, Mississauga's biggest, it's not even a flaw, I think Mississauga's biggest obstacle is where we're physically located. We're right beside Toronto. And for the longest time, we were that, I'm going to pass through Mississauga to get to Toronto for music, food, fashion, arts, culture, events. We're slowly starting to carve our own identity out. But again, being next to the biggest city in the country doesn't do us as many favors as I think people may perceive it to.
If you look at the coverage in the major, let's call it the mainstream media, so the Globe, Toronto Star, National Post, like Mississauga is looped into the Toronto beat. Mm-hmm. Like when you look in the front page, if you look for the the news of the day, any news relating to, I'm thinking like if Mayor Crombie makes an announcement, or if there's news that's centered in Mississauga, it's always in the Toronto section, which is but it's a disservice, because I used to work in Mississauga for a little while, and it's what strikes me unique about Mississauga is that it's actually a bunch of smaller communities lumped together. Right. If you go into Mississauga and you talk to anyone who is from Mississauga, you say, "Where are you from?" They won't say Mississauga. They always say, "I'm from Streetsville. I'm from Port Credit. I'm from
Clarkson, Erin Mills, Lauren Park, Cooksville, Malton, whatever it is."
Yeah, like that. If you're outside of Mississauga, like where is that? Oh, I find it's Mississauga. But if you talk, like everybody's like, "No, I'm in. I got my hood, exactly." Yeah. And that kind of uniqueness that's there. That the mainstream media, like you can't. I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. Like you can't put that flavor in your words, right? You in your pieces. And I'm just like, is that a challenge that you found in trying to cover the flavor of Mississauga? I guess I'll put it as just that getting over that perception of Mississauga is just a bedroom community of Toronto.
Absolutely. Now, the fortunate part was I was only serving Mississauga, so I didn't have to initially worry about the Torontos, Bramptons, or Oakvilles, the three surrounding cities for us. I'm like, okay, let's do a piece on the 6 cool things to do in summer, or six cool things to do in Malton, or insert village here this summer, this fall. Or, did you know that Cooksville has this hidden gem, or whatever it is. But the bigger and bigger that modern Mississauga became, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that thing in Toronto, and don't you guys have something like that in Mississauga? And whenever I'd say, yeah, in Streetsville we have which is equivalent or better to than what Toronto may have. Like, we don't know what a Streetsville is, but you mean Mississauga, right? So trying to brand different communities in Mississauga to non-Mississauga residents is a very steep and slippery hill. And it's not that I've given up. But I just try and, very quietly put the extra word Streetsville in some articles just to remind people that we are not one massive landmass with 0 other communities within it.
Well, it happens in Toronto. In Toronto, you'll have Taste of the Danforth. If you're outside of Toronto, you might not know what or where the Danforth is, but the Danforth is part of Toronto.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you're doing, because too often, I mean, Roland and I like to bitch about politics. That's our bread and butter. But part of media coverage is like kind of that stuff that is on the outside of that, or just other than that, the stuff that makes a city a city, right? Like,
exactly.
Where to eat, what to do. What do we do when we're not bitching about how the government's wasting our taxes?
We're having lunch at a patio bitching about what the government's doing.
Exactly. That's a story. Which patio has the best acoustics to bitch about day to day?
The one right beside the mayor's house. That's the one.
Well, that's always a good. I guess a big part of what we're trying to do, because why we focused on the 905, is because this is a shared problem to an extent across the whole region. We're all in, we've traditionally been in Toronto's shadow. And in some cases, and I'm not necessarily talking about Mississauga here, perhaps deservedly so. Burlington started out as kind of a dormitory town, very, very white, very middle class. It's changing now, and the whole 905 is changing. It's becoming more diverse. And I feel like the cities are they're growing up. They're becoming real cities rather than, a city that's kind of a suburb of Toronto, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So, I just, part of my drive routes at night, I either go up north through Forks of the Credit and Caledon and Bell Fountain, or I run all the way down Lakeshore. And Oakville's revamped Lakeshore is just unreal. Like, they've done so much. And it's, for me as a driver, and someone who specifically likes driving, like the traffic calming things by putting a small little portion of bricks on the road at some of the busier intersections, having their Christmas lights up until March to still entice people to come, redoing their main square, throwing up a Christmas tree in there, all through a pandemic. Like, if I had a hat, I would tip it to Oakville for doing something so beautiful. And even with Burlington, I don't remember the name of the pier. I think it's like maybe 10 years old now.
We just call it the pier.
The pier. Okay, good. So maybe I'm like, okay, so I can be an honorary Burlingtonian, if that's even what.
No one's going to know the difference.
Right, like you guys have your own built-in attraction in Burlington, and Mississauga's lakefront is under a massive redevelopment, and it's going to take about 15, 20 years for it to be something we can show off. And Mississauga's getting the LRT, which I don't think we need anymore, but you can't undo a shovel from the ground, so to speak. And even around the bend, Niagara Falls, Vineland, St. Catharines, Niagara-on-the-Lake, all of the smaller communities that are further away from Toronto are trying extremely hard, sorry about that, to really carve their own identity, like you said, because they don't want to be lumped into the not Toronto, but Toronto's neighbors blanket word.
On that note, Jay, you said that, and I think you really got it, you hit the nail on the head a bit there, that all these communities in the 905, they're trying to find their own identity. They're trying to find their own, what makes them unique. And I think that all that comes down into like the culture and the restaurants and those attractions, like a pier, a nice downtown, the amenities of life that make it unique. And as somebody clearly who's been around the 905 region during the pandemic, I'm curious, like what do you see as what makes this region unique, and maybe where could we take it in the next, say, 10 years?
Oh, wow. What a question. You guys said no hard questions. You lied.
Can't back out now. We're recording.
I think having all these different little neighborhoods and different sources of pride, like, Port Credit is we want to call ourselves the heartbeat of the city because we're by the lake. We get the most amount of tourists. Streetsville's, over 100 years old, and the founder's name is Timothy Street, and it's very quaint, and it's got train tracks and a cool walkable downtown. And Malton is also wonderful because it houses aviation, and the Avro Air was built there, and Canada's busiest airport is there, and it's a great place to get all sorts of ethnic and diverse foods. So I think every part of Mississauga has its collective strength as having something unique to offer, and you don't really get the same thing on any street, any neighborhood. any intersection. Mississauga is fairly diverse for a city with almost 800,000 people. There's a lot of common fabric that holds us together, but we're still a very diverse community.
When I ran for council, I tried to get through an episode without mentioning that, but it's really not. I lost. I really should stop mentioning it. However, one of the things I heard...
But it's the experience. What is it? The journey is the destination?
The journey was incredible, actually. I enjoyed the journey. The destination kind of sucked. But actually, it was maybe the right destination, it turned out. One of the things I heard, and this is going to be a tough thing to say to someone who runs...
Just say it. Just say it.
People would say, we don't want to be like, we don't want Burlington turning into just a Mississauga. And just thinking what you're saying there was that what people meant, they didn't mean Mississauga. What they were actually saying was they knew nothing about Mississauga, A, because Mississauga has so many different communities. Mm-hmm. And B, I suspect they were talking about the center, Square One, and that they view that through a particular lens that may be accurate or not. But is that something that you were kind of aware of with through the magazine, that this I guess we already spoke about it to an extent, but this kind of perception of Mississauga that is actually very unfair?
It is. Now, is Burlington... I'm thinking I should be careful with how I word this. I'm just going to go out and say it because I don't mean any...
There's something really rude about Mississauga, so you can come right back at me.
No, I don't mean it to be like rude, and I don't want it to be perceived the wrong way, but there's a lot of development in the Square One area. Mm-hmm. And I hate to sound like that old guy. So, when I moved to Mississauga in 1993, there was farmland, and there's clearly no farmland left. It's condos, because that's how you get the most amount of people in a small space. You build up. And there's all sorts of cranes across the skyline. And I'm about 5 minutes north of Square One, and I'm in Ontario in Eglinton. And specifically, there's a whole community being built. I think it's 9 towers. Almost 500 townhouses, and the first tower just went up, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So, is to kind of circle back to what you said about Burlington not wanting to be Toronto, is that more of we don't want to turn our beautiful downtown into just skyscrapers and not just have it filled with people, making traffic difficult, making it unappealing by having too many people there? Yeah,
I mean, without getting into ancient history, there's always fear of change. Let's put it that way. That a lot of people, there is always going to be a certain amount of resistance to any change. And when you go from a low-rise situation to a mid-rise to high-rise, that's a big change. And there are I'm not going to get into the arguments one way or the other, but there certainly have been plenty of arguments. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. There's fear of a kind of faceless, the same as everywhere else. But when you look at the reality, if you take someone like Mississauga as a much bigger city that's kind of maybe 10 years ahead of somewhere like Burlington in terms of the amount of development that's gone on, then you're seeing a city that is becoming something distinct in the 905 region rather than something to be feared. It's like, no, this is an amazing place with huge amounts of things going on. This is a far more interesting city than Mississauga was when there were no high-rise. I'm putting words in your mouth here, but
I let you.
I can sell anything and give them enough time.
You're a great guest.
But I mean that seems to be kind of the lesson that if you person A may not like the high rises, person B may be like, this is where I want to live because right in the center of city, I don't need transits available. I'm close to restaurants, and there's swings and roundabouts to everything. But
and person C might be like, this is the only place I can afford to live because I don't have over $1 million for a house on outside of the core, but I do have 500 to 700 grand to pick up a 2-bedroom condo for myself for a couple of years. So I think you're absolutely right. It's not for everybody, and you'll always have 3 sides to every story. The fence sitters, the left side and the right side, and I think that you can't hit the pause button for too long. Maybe if you're a tiny town and you want to preserve your charm, or you have a great view of mountains or whatever, don't allow 50 or 60 story buildings to go all over the place. But there's a hotel just on Lakeshore and Brant, right? That's kind of fairly tall. Waterside, I think.
There's 2. Well, there'll be 2. There's Marriott going in along Lakeshore, and then there's another one that's already been there for some time now. But I mean, going back to Mississauga though, you're right. The kind of downtown core down or where Square One is, where City Hall is, it's being built up with a lot. Like I'm thinking the Marilyn Monroe Towers, which is kind of turned into a bit of an icon of the city, kind of a landmark. And then you have going back to Streetsville. It's almost jarring that you're in this kind of. It looks like this quaint small town Ontario feel. And exactly, train tracks going through. You have these small, 2-story buildings, homes, and it feels like a small town Ontario. And then you keep driving into Mississauga, and you get into down by Square One. That's where all the big high rises are, and it's an interesting experiment in terms of development to be able to preserve kind of this spot in time, this small town Ontario in time, but then you still have we have the need for urban growth, denser populations, more amenities for life in another part. It's an interesting. I don't really have a question. It's more of a statement. Just like it's an interesting experiment in terms of how do you build a modern city? Because the fact is, people are wanting to live in Mississauga. Clearly, like they're building these condos and somebody's buying them.
Well, yeah, because you can't break ground. I think until it was at 60-70% sold.
Right.
So there's billions of dollars in the developer's pocket. Not to being a jerk about it, but like they have to have that to get everything in motion to get it. And they're not going to go to the city council and go, "Hey, we think we want a permit because we could definitely maybe sell these things on every other Thursday." Right? Like they must have lineups, whether it's at the showroom centers or online or whatever, however people are getting a hold of them. You go to city or the city of Mississauga when you are like 99% up your way there. You're like, all right, here's what we have. Here's what we need. This is the plot of land and on and on. I will put it back to you guys. I'm not sure how well Roland knows Mississauga outside of me. But Joel, since you have work experience there,
shoot,
where would you live if I could just pick you up and drop you in Mississauga for a 5-year period?
Awkward silence. Port Credit would be nice. Port Credit would be nice. There are a lot of nice. I'll be honest. I wouldn't want to live down by Square One, down by the City Hall. That's just my take. But like Streetsville is a really nice place to go. Like down by Port Credit. If I could have my pick of anywhere in Mississauga, Port Credit would kind of, I think, be my top pick. It's just like a really nice, like you get that amenities of city life. Like there's high end restaurants, there's high end cuisine, there's
great retail,
great retail. There's good places to just go and be, like good parklands. There's good, you have down by Port Credit. You of course have the marina and the rowing club and whatnot. So I mean, like that's what I get. Is like I find. And it's not just Burlington, it's not in Mississauga. Now, I'm thinking also like in Hamilton, Oakville, the argument over development, right? It's like we're going to lose something. And I say, I don't know if we're necessarily going to lose anything. We might gain something, but I don't think we necessarily have to lose feeling that we want that we want that kind of pocket of calm and serenity away from
the hustle and bustle, right?
Exactly.
And I think, at least I think Mississauga has that still. So I also wouldn't live in Square One or in the Square One downtown area. Right. Even as a single guy with no kids, who likes to kind of get out there and be social and just have all things close to me. I've been in the same house for 10 years, knowing that it's a very short drive or a medium-sized walk away and that it's accessible to me means more than actually living and breathing it every day. And, maybe it's being the oldest child and having some kind of control issues. But if I want to be able to take myself in my backyard and stay there for the night, as opposed to going on a balcony in the Square One area in the middle of summer where everybody else is, I want to be able to choose to have that quiet. Other people may say, I love it. I love hearing the sounds of the city. I like hearing lights. I like looking over Celebration Square and seeing concerts, events, people watching, food trucks, whatever it is. So I hate cliches, and you're going to hear a bunch of them because I've said it out loud. No, I have my brain's going to make me say them. It's the different strokes for different folks kind of thing, right? Lake life is beautiful. Quaint life in Streetsville is great. Having nearly every sort of food option in Malton, if you're a foodie, that's the place to be. If you want something kind of in between, you end up around here, Ontario and Eglinton, like I am.
See, that's what I think makes or breaks a city is your food options.
Oh, for sure.
I am
This is why Britain is doomed.
But like that's what I love. That's what I love about this country is honestly the food. Like if you think about it, you could walk a block in some neighborhoods, and you could have Indian, Greek,
Chinese, Mediterranean, shawarma, Afghanistan.
You could literally eat the world in a couple city blocks in some neighborhoods, and you can't necessarily do that in all places of the world.
Right.
And the thing is, like we the last couple of weeks, there's talk about racism in Canada and divisions in this country, and I always look and say it's really hard to hate somebody when you're eating their food. Like it's really hard to just be like, oh, you people, but can I have some more? Can you pass me
that fourth serving, please? Because
can I have seconds? It's just our guard is down, and it's there's something about breaking bread with a neighbor and a friend that and it's that those stories behind the different cuisines that are out there. Especially when you find that kind of that small hole in the wall place that nobody else knows about, but it's that the family run restaurant that they're just like, no, we're doing it out of love, passion.
Yep.
This is my grandmother's recipe.
It will die with me.
Exactly. So come see my restaurant while you still can.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Like that's what I think makes a city great. And I think that it's kind of spreading out from Mississauga. Like I remember here in Burlington, we the idea of ethnic was the Mandarin, and you're like, and nowadays, like we're like, hey, let's eat Indian tonight, honey. Okay, where are we ordering from? We have to have a list of food, and that was a conversation that just did not happen in this part of the world for a long, long time.
But now that it's here,
it's a good thing, and I'm getting fatter because of it. So,
well, you're contributing to the economy because you're buying more clothes, then you're going to contribute further by to the exercise world because you're not going to want to fit into those clothes all the time. You're going to want to slim back down. And then, me, you'll just yo-yo back and forth for about 20 years and then give up.
It's for the economy. I'm helping the Canadian economy. I like your rationalization, Jay.
You're doing your patriotic duty, Joel.
That's right. Pass the samosas.
It's really, I mean, this is the ultimate lesson of all this. I think Mississauga's story kind of typifies the story of the 905 in so many, in that it's a region that kind of was really boring maybe 40 years ago.
Absolutely. It was, I think anywhere in the modern world with farmland balanced with condos has some big transition shoes to fill. And Mississauga was boring because we weren't known for anything 20, 30, 40 years ago. There were no Marilyn Monroe towers. There was no Square One, Erin Mills. We were an airport. Even we were called the Greater Toronto Airport, or it was called the GTA. We wouldn't say, I'm flying into Malton from Spain, and oh my goodness, look where I am. I'm flying to Toronto. Even with Billy Bishop down at Bathurst and Lakeshore, Pearson is still Toronto's airport, right? Yeah. The heart of the 401 runs through Mississauga, and I'm just going to Toronto across the 401. So I'm happy that we're slowly putting ourselves on the map, and I'm happy we're not doing it faster than we can handle it. Yes, it seems there's a new crane up in the air every day, and it seems there's another dozen cars on my drive to my parents' house, which happens to be in Streetsville. But you can't just say, we're done growing. We don't want any more people. We don't want any more cars, because you don't grow that way. You don't get any more jobs that way. No more opportunities. You may find your next employer here, your next favorite restaurant, park, whatever it is. Would I like to see it go a little faster? Absolutely. I'm a little impatient, but I think our leadership team here in Mississauga is not of the ready, fire, aim mentality. I think they've taken their time with it, which is good. I think the only thing that they should have said no to was the LRT. But on the flip side, who says no to 1.4, which is now $1.6 billion?
Hamilton might, but anyway, that's another story.
Can we have a separate episode about that? Like that is
we have many times before. Or yeah. Well,
now, is there any way? Let's put Jay Kana aside for a sec. In under 30 seconds for each of you, will Hamilton get that LRT, or is it too late?
I think they will.
I think they will too, but
just
they will bitch and moan about it all the way to the finish line. They'll complain about that until like the last bolt of the track is in.
Will people use it?
Oh yeah.
I think they will. I mean, just my experience of LRT in other parts of the world, which is not extensive. I think I can't speak to Mississauga and the LRT there, but I think with Hamilton, with a city that is basically a Victorian city that needs serious renewal, I think that's the kind of place that it absolutely does work, and it acts. The big argument for it is, it's more expensive, but the council can't screw it up once it's there, because, like you just said, it's there.
Yeah.
So businesses can say, okay, we can rely on this thing. This is going to be a player in our city for decades and decades to come. Mm-hmm. We don't need to worry that they're going to change the bus route, etc., etc. That's the argument, and I do find that persuasive in Hamilton. And I always go back to, so I lived outside Edinburgh in Scotland for a decade or so, and the route that I used to get into the city at that point was buses only, and I drove every single time. When I go back now, I use the LRT because the LRT is nice and it's as good as the car and you don't have to pay for parking. So it actually, somehow it's different to a bus. A bus was a pain in the neck. The LRT is, you hop on, it's £1 or whatever, and you're done.
Now, with the pandemic and the proof of concept being we can all work from home and be just as productive, LRT was made to get more cars off the road, but the pandemic has done that for us. And yes, I realize it is incredibly challenging to retrofit a city. I don't know if Mississauga will fully benefit from an LRT that'll be done in about 10 years from now.
There's a lot of questions from the pandemic that will remain to be unseen. I mean, we're as we were talking prior to recording, you have, I'm thinking of up in Erin Mills, you have all the headquarters for like Microsoft, Baxter,
Hill, all the Baxter, all the pharmaceuticals,
all those Canadian headquarters up there. Mm-hmm. They're taking up massive real estate in those buildings. The question would be whether or not the government would come in and help those companies say, can you trim down your footprint to kind of a bare minimum footprint instead of the entire building? Because the thing is, you have those whole buildings and they're sitting there going, it's wasted space if all of our people can work from home.
Now, what do we do with 1 million square feet of office space?
But that is literally the $1 billion question. And you and I were saying, like, if the government stepped in and said, okay, let's subsidize help landlords end the leases and convert them into viable condos, rental units, whatever. I think that would be an interesting project to experiment with, especially in Mississauga. Because I think in Mississauga, there is a ton of really great real estate that is currently being used as headquarters for major Canadian operations. Great for Mississauga, good business, all good things. But, if you can encourage these companies to let their executives and let their middle management staff stay at home and start freeing up the space for condo development, it'd be pretty revolutionary policy just to help bring down housing prices. Again, especially in Mississauga, where we need to start seeing these housing prices, I don't know about coming down, but at least start plateauing a lot better than how they've been going for the last 20 years or so.
Yeah. Like it just seems like there's no end.
Well, there isn't any end. It's just going to continue to go up, but we need to start finding a way to present more housing for families and for people to live in. I think the pandemic is post-pandemic. There'll be an option there. Whether or not our provincial and federal government's going to step in to kind of step on the gas and get that process going remains to be seen.
Well, I think they're going to leave a hell of a lot of money on the table. Like if Microsoft just as an example, if they're like, we don't really need, this 1 million square feet of office space at Erin Mills and Derry, we're out. Come sue us. We'll see in about 20 years if you win, because nothing ever moves fast in the court system. So now you've got 1 million square feet doing nothing, unusable, and no one's making any money off of it. So I think it would be an absolutely great idea if the feds and the municipal level and the province got together and found a way to retrofit it, to adjust it, to make it convertible into something. It doesn't have to be, we don't need a 50-story tower, but maybe a couple of small rises, maybe a townhouse complex, maybe anything. That there's
just a little imagination is all I'm asking for.
Exactly.
And just to see what can happen. Because I think when you take that small idea, it can have big implications. It can change, if you think about changing the way people live, especially in an urban setting like Mississauga. Mm-hmm. It can have huge repercussions down the road that people start changing, driving habits, the demand for more park space, the more smaller business, small boutiques and small restaurants opening up because, you sit there like, I don't want to get on the GO train into Toronto anymore. I'm tired of that lifestyle. I want something that literally I'd roll out of bed and
go in my track pants and my Guns N' Roses t-shirt, and I want the best damn burrito Mississauga has to offer, and I can get it.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with people demanding that that's their lifestyle now. It says, I want to work from home, and I want to eat. I want to find that burrito place that's in my neighborhood. I want to find that that place that serves the best pho in my neighborhood, and that's going to be my go-to. That's going to be my go-to Tuesday lunch or whatever.
Exactly.
I really don't think there's anything wrong with people demanding, I want a better work-life balance. I don't want to spend 2-3 hours a day on the GO train or standing on the tracks at Union Station because I missed my train. I want to be home with my family. I want to be,
it has such a virtuous circle as well, because it's like, wow, you're reducing your emission. You're having a better life because you're not, your strongest relationship is not with the 401.
It's with your wife, right? Like, oh my goodness. Or like your parents or somebody who's around you.
And you've got more time to spend money at the restaurants and the local economy. And it's like every way you look to benefit. And, and just that, if office space were to be freed up, and what an opportunity to solve a whole housing crisis almost at a stroke. I mean, it's all it needs, and the municipalities could be looking at this now, because they will need, right now, you're not allowed to live in an office block because that's zoned for commercial. So they need to not take 20 years to think about, hey, how could we change it?
Yeah, can we just highlight it, hit delete, and retype in the right word?
But I look at kind of coming back to your question about LRT. I'm thinking in Mississauga, the LRT is running up here, Ontario, right? Right. I got that right. Here, Ontario is built for cars. That's just the way it's designed. And if you think about the track that we're on in this conversation, can you imagine here, Ontario being transformed into a more of a walking boulevard, that you could take that LRT, hop on, go up and down the length of the road, but you hop off it because you want to go see, go to a not necessarily a nightclub, but you want to go see a pub, right? Somebody play at a pub, and then afterwards walk to a nice park or walk up and down the boulevard. And I say that it's possible because in Paris, the Champs-Élysées, the city of Paris is talking about converting it into basically a walking boulevard. No longer these cars going down it. I don't know if it'll succeed, but it's not that kind of ambitious thinking. That wouldn't that be cool if the city of Mississauga kind of took that as saying, what if we did that? What if we had more communal spaces on these major roads like here, Ontario, because people aren't driving on it. It's just that would be. For future Mississauga leaders, if you are listening right now, that would be this kind of stuff that I like to think about. Not just we always need to buy roads for cars. What if we took the existing infrastructure and we said we don't need it? What if we try and make it so we don't need it? What could you do with it?
I think you could do nearly anything with it. I think it was 2 to 4 years ago, maybe, there were all sorts of proposals and ideas as to what to do with the gardener. Right? Do we bury it? Do we... And I saw one of them. It was all grass and it was just all park space, and you just hang out, you walk your dog, go for picnics, do whatever you want. And I was astounded that hadn't been done or hadn't been thought of beforehand. And if a city like Toronto can handle that, in theory, on a smaller scale, Mississauga, Oakville, Burlington, Brampton, Niagara Falls, everything around the belt can absolutely do that too. And to just go back a couple minutes to your point, we could go for a drink in Port Credit. We could catch a concert in Celebration Square, and our transit time might be 10 minutes, maybe 15, where it would take 15 minutes to unpark the car from square one.
So I think I'm going to wrap it up at that point, because we know you have another call in just a few minutes. So we really appreciate you joining us today. It's a fascinating conversation. We've fixed every problem in the 905 the last 45 minutes, which I think is...
I hope you guys license this and make some money off this for us solving all these problems in 45 minutes.
Well, you know what? I'm just going to take a day tomorrow, and I'm going to call it quits. So we're good.
All right. So
everybody, just call it in tomorrow.
Done.
Crack open the beers. We're done.
Problem solved. Drinks by the lake. Hello, summer.
Well, thanks so much, Jay. Tell everybody to go check out Modern Mississauga at modernmississauga.com. And all the best, and we're so glad to have a full episode dealing with Mississauga today, because it's been
overdue. That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.